And weight stigma is so real because I remember at one point when I was a chubby teenager, there was this grown adult walking behind me in the market, and they asked me as I was walking, and I know it was really directed to me, and they said,
"Hey, what are they cooking at home?"
And at that point, I'm a teenager. I'm not just going to start arguing with an adult, but it really stuck with me because I'm really just minding my business, working in a market, and there's a full adult behind me making fun of my weight. That's how bad weight stigma is. So I understand why people would want to embrace health at every size, because if it means that they are going to be treated with respect, regardless of how much they weigh, then that's a good thing. That's a good change in society. It's something that I still embrace even now, despite the fact that I'm no longer in health at every size, because nobody should be treated differently just because they are underweight or they are overweight. It's just a number on the scale. What if everything you thought you knew about weight loss was a complete lie? I thought I found the answer in health at every size, but it almost destroyed my health. Hello there and welcome back to these health diaries. If you're coming back for a second time, welcome back. It's really nice to have you back. I think you'll notice that the background has changed. I'm yet to decide what I want to do with this section because it's very plain, but it's a change from our previous studio, which was a bit bland. Even with these really weird looking space, it still looks better than what we had last time. Yay! If you're new here, my name is Daisy, aka D, and I make weekly videos on weight loss needs. And today I'm going to be tackling health at every size because, believe it or not, I was once a huge proponent of health at every size. You might not believe it right now if you've seen my programs or even if you know what I stand for right now, but there was a time that I really thought that you could be healthy at every size. So today I'm going to be talking about how I even got to that point, the point at which I decided that health at every size did not make any more sense, and where I stand now and why I stand on that business. But as always, in anything that we do in this channel, there's always nuance. So you can expect that I'll include a lot of nuances in this story because it's not just about my personal story, it's also about facts. And as always, we include science. As I'm telling my story, I'll include pictures and videos here to show you my transformation, and I'll also be explaining what health at every size actually stands for and why people actually believe in it. I've said actually so many times, actually. So without much further ado, let's get started. Like many women, I struggled with weight fluctuations for a very long time. In fact, for me, my weight fluctuations started when I was a teenager, when I just joined high school. That's when I gained weight. Before that, I did not even have any weight issues. I gained my weight when I was a teenager. And after I was done with high school, I was able to lose the weight by doing aerobics. I did aerobics, and that's also how I found Fitness Blender. I would do their 10-minute ab workouts, and actually it turned out okay. Ended up losing the weight. I'll include pictures and videos here. At that point, I finally got to a healthy weight. Then I started my undergraduate degree, and my weight was pretty much stable. But it got to a point where, I was a young woman. I really wanted to make sure that I looked as petite as possible. So I still continued doing diets. And at one point, I tried the gluten-free diet. And at that point, I became so small, so tiny, that even my doctor was asking me to gain weight. I would go to the doctor's office and he would look at my BMI and will be like, no, this is underweight. And as you can see from the pictures, yes, I was actually underweight. But to me, it looked good because being petite was the goal at that point. Right now, the goal is to be muscular, but at that point, I really wanted to be petite. Naturally, I tried one fad diet after another fad diet because I wanted to lose the weight. So like when I did the gluten-free diet, I looked petite for a while, and then I went back to eating gluten and I got bigger. Then I would try something else, maybe a low carb diet, and then I would do that, and then it will get to a point where I was tired of doing low carb, and then I would eat more carbs, and then I would gain the weight back. So like many women, it was just this process of weight loss, weight gain, weight loss, weight gain, weight loss, weight gain, and it was tiring. I wanted something that would work completely. Moving on to COVID year, that's when I was doing my master's. And at that point, I gained weight because it was COVID, yeah. People were staying home. I mean, I was in Mauritius at the time. It was really fun. We were really active. But I think the mental toll of it being a COVID year and me living abroad, because originally I'm from Kenya. So when I was living in Mauritius, I was a foreigner there, which was great. But it's still, there is that emotional toll of you're away from home. You can't actually fly back home because there's COVID. And you're worried about the people back home because there's COVID. Naturally, I started eating more than I actually needed, and that resulted in weight gain. And come the end of COVID year, I moved back home to Kenya. And I looked at myself and realized that I had gained more weight than I wanted. Again, I was bigger. It wasn't like I was extremely big, but I was bigger. I was really tired of the yo-yo dieting where I'll just lose weight, gain weight, and all of that. You know, that whole cycle. This time I wanted it to end. As part of ending this cycle, I had taken up a diet coaching certification back in COVID year 2021, and I had already learned what I needed to do. I knew about macros, I knew about calories, I knew about micronutrients, I knew everything. But still, I did not want it to be like a mathematical calculation. I didn't just want to do calories in versus calories out. I wanted something that felt a bit more sustainable for me moving forward, because I wanted something that I could work on for myself and also use it to help my clients. I started reading more about healthy lifestyles and healthy eating, because I did not want to look at just food alone, because to me, wellness is not just about what you eat, it's also about what you do. And I wanted books that encompass the entire lifestyle, thinking, mindset, activities, everything. And it was along this route that I came across very interesting books. The first one was Intuitive Eating. This one was written by two lovely doctors, and it was very interesting because they talked about the concept of eating when you're hungry, stopping when you're full, not letting food control you. Also talked about challenging the food police in your head, even in your community. They talked about food as this really fun thing, not just fuel. Because with diet coaching, sometimes the concept is just food is fuel. It's something that you eat. It doesn't really consider the culture. It does not consider their mindset. It doesn't consider all those things. It's just you need 1800 calories, and if you eat more than 1800 calories, you gain weight. You eat less than 1800 calories, you lose it. That's just an example of a number. So when I read this book on intuitive eating, which was published by, let me see, Evelyn Tribble and Elise Resch, probably have really mispronounced their names. But it's a really nice book. I'll add it here so that you can go and look at it if you will be interested. If you won't be interested. And it really helped me address the issue of restriction, because after a lifetime of doing diets, yes, I started after high school, but it's still a lot because I did it throughout my undergraduate degree and I did it again during my master's. It's a lot of restricting, and that diet mindset was still a really huge part of me, and I did not want to continue living like that. So when I came across the intuitive eating principles, which I list here, I really started thinking about food in a different way, and I started thinking about health as more of just food, which was really what I wanted. I wanted something that was enjoyable. So after I read that book, I decided to look for another book just like it. And that's exactly how I came across Health at Every Size, which was written by Linda Bacon, who is now known as Linda Bacon. So what exactly is Health at Every Size? To understand the Health at Every Size concept, you have to understand the core philosophies. And I'm going to add them here so that you can follow along, but they're very simple, and you'll understand the appeal behind the Health at Every Size movement. Why do people really want to be part of this movement, and why do people like me live? So let's start with concept number one. They really insist on weight inclusivity. They talk about the fact that your weight has no relationship with your health, and the book includes very many studies that show that people who have lost weight don't exactly get healthier than others. It also talks about people who have gone through weight loss surgeries and the fact that their health outcomes are not different from those of people who had not gone through weight loss surgeries. And reading that, I was just very amazed, because I thought, okay, this whole time I've been trying to lose weight because we are told that if we are very overweight or we are obese, or worse, we are clinically morbidly obese, then we're in danger of so many diseases. And there was this book showing me that even if I was overweight or obese, that it didn't really matter as long as that I was living a healthy lifestyle. And that meant that I could forget about looking at the scale and instead just focus on enjoying life. I loved it. The second concept they talk about, I'm going to generalize these themes because I'll not go through each one by one, but the book is available. If you'd like to go and look at it more and even read it, that will be great because you can understand it more. So now the second concept is health enhancement. The idea behind the book ties to intuitive eating to a very great extent, in that it talks about making health more accessible for people around the world, regardless of their socioeconomic status, regardless of their size. The whole idea is to encourage people to live healthier lives, to move more, to eat more nutritious foods, to have more fulfilling relationships. It's about health in general. So you don't just look at, am I eating? It's more about, am I fueling my body? Am I nourishing my body? Am I moving my body for joy? That's where joyful movement comes from. So the whole book is about enhancing overall health. The third one, which is something that definitely appeals to people, is addressing weight stigma. Because let's face it, we live in a world where people are really stigmatized because of their weight. People have even talked about the fact that people treat them better because they have lost weight, or the fact that people treat them really horribly because they are bigger. And as much as we'd like to say that sometimes that's internalized, and maybe you're thinking that people are treating you differently because of what you expect them to treat you like, there's also the truth that it's true. Even as kids, it's normal for, and I'm not saying it's right, but it's normal for kids to make fun of the bigger kid. As adolescents, it's even worse. I was a chubby adolescent, I was a chubby teen. So I know that people really do make fun of teenagers when they're big. And it's not just the teenagers who will make fun of them, even adults. And weight stigma is so real because I remember at one point when I was a chubby teenager, there was this grown adult walking behind me in the market, and they asked me as I was walking, and I know it was really directed to me, and they said, "Hey, what are they cooking at home?" And at that point, I'm a teenager. I'm not just going to start arguing with an adult, but it really stuck with me because I'm really just minding my business working in a market, and there's a full adult behind me making fun of my weight. That's how bad weight stigma is. So I understand why people would want to embrace health at every size, because if it means that they are going to be treated with respect, regardless of how much they weigh, then that's a good thing. That's a good change in society. It's something that I still embrace even now, despite the fact that I'm no longer in health at every size, because nobody should be treated differently just because they're underweight or they're overweight. It's just a number on the scale. And we have the fourth philosophy is eating for well-being. Health at every size advocates that people should eat more nutritious foods, that the focus should be on eating balanced meals. We're talking about adding more fruits and vegetables to our meals, eating enough protein, eating enough carbohydrates, getting enough fats, because all of these micronutrients and macronutrients play a critical role in our bodies. And 5, we come again to joyful movement. The idea behind health at every size is that movement should be enjoyable. You're not supposed to be going to the gym to lift weights if you don't actually enjoy it. And this is something that I agree with, because if you're doing something that you don't enjoy, if you look at exercise as punishment for eating, or if you look at it as something that you have to do because you have to pay for eating, or for any other reason other than the fact that you enjoy it, it's going to be very hard for it to be sustainable. And truth be told, exercise is good for us. But when we talk about exercise, especially when you look at programs like The Biggest Loser or any other programs that aired in the early 2000s that really focused on helping people lose weight, you will see that exercise was used kind of as a form of punishment. And when people usually did aerobics or went to the gym at these times, they had to do very stringent workouts that were not fun at all. So many people fell out of love with the idea of exercising. Now, Health at Every Size tries to address that and the past trauma that people may have from exercising in such environments by encouraging them to find something that works for them. Because exercise should be accessible to people regardless of their physical abilities and their size. So if you're comfortable with swimming as opposed to going on walks, then you swim. If you like going on walks, then you go on walks. If you don't like strength training at the gym, then you find a way to build muscle at home. So it's all about making movement enjoyable. So on reading the entire book from cover to cover, I really loved what I was reading, because here was a book telling me that I did not have to think about calories. Here was a book telling me that if I did not want to go to the gym, I did not have to go to the gym. It was a book that was telling me that I was worthy regardless of what I weighed. It was just the perfect book for me at that point. We're talking about someone who has been yo-yo dieting for a long time, and I've finally come to a place where I can finally take a break. And the most important message was,
being fat was okay and my health would not suffer because of it.
I could finally forget about diabetes. I could finally forget about high blood pressure. I could finally forget about predisposition to some types of cancers. Those were things that had been used to scare people in the past. And here was this book that was telling me that was just a lie. So, as you can imagine, after coming from a lifetime of restricting, what do you think I did with that information? I ate. I ate everything and anything. I ate pizzas. I ate Oreos. If I woke up in the middle of the night and I was hungry, I would make myself a bowl of Weetabix. I ate as long as I was hungry. And while I did stop when I was full, again, we're talking about someone who had been restricting for a long time, so the amount of times that I was hungry was quite high. I was hungry, I was hungry, I was hungry. And even if it was craving, even if it was emotional hunger or just taste hunger, I did not see the difference between that and physical hunger. So if I was hungry because I was bored, I ate. I just ate. Because with intuitive eating, they do teach you how to differentiate these types of hunger. They do teach you that you're not just supposed to be eating to mask your emotions, or you're not just supposed to be eating just because you're hungry. And they do teach you that you're supposed to honor your hunger cues, your physical hunger cues. But with hell at every size, you're told it doesn't matter. Be fat, do whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. You just do what works for you. And what do you think I followed? Intuitive eating? No, I ate.
Because I could be healthy at every size.
Hell at every size was this wonderful, wonderful train ride that I took for a very, very long time. And by a long time, I mean around 4 to 5 months, because the troubles came knocking soon after I had started munching on Oreos and eating all those pizzas. And at first, the trouble started slowly. I had had issues with my tummy for a long time. By tummy, I mean my stomach. I used to have stomach issues back when, let's say in my undergraduate years, I used to have stomach issues, and they started coming back. I started getting this horrible nausea that just wouldn't go away. It was just there. And I had trouble sleeping. I had trouble with my daily life, because when you feel nauseated all the time, it's just very hard to go to bed. It's very hard to stay alert. It's hard to work. It's even hard to plan, even if you're traveling somewhere, because you have to think about what if I get nauseated. And at some point, the nausea even started affecting my appetite, because I couldn't eat because I was too nauseated to eat. Naturally, I started going to the hospital, and the doctors will try to look for the reason why I was feeling so nauseated, and they wouldn't find anything. At some point, they will think that it was a H. pylori infection based on my medical history, and they will test that, and then they will find that the infection level was minimal, and it was not enough to explain my symptoms. But because they couldn't find anything else, they just assumed that, yes, it was a H. pylori issue. And they will send me home with proton pump inhibitors. Those are PPIs. Those are really horrible medicines. Okay, at least in my opinion and based on my experience, because they will make the nausea worse. I'll be on these medications for like 2 to 4 weeks, and then I'll be back in hospital. It was just a horrible cycle. At one point, I had gone to the hospital the day before, and the doctor had prescribed PPIs again. And that time, I just refused to take the PPIs, and I decided to get a second opinion at a different hospital, which was the best thing that I did. Because when I went to the next hospital, the doctor decided to refer me to a gastroenterologist. And this doctor was very well versed in stomach issues. In fact, he just conducted a physical medical exam, and he told me, you know what you have is Gastroesophageal Reflux Disease, aka GERD, which I'll call GERD. Hopefully that's the right pronunciation when I'm using an abbreviation. So I had GERD. And the doctor proceeded to tell me that I had 2 options. Option 1, I could get a surgery, which would help them work on my lower esophageal sphincter, because that's the muscle that was not working correctly. Okay, this is what GERD is. And so there was a surgery that they could do to help that muscle work correctly. But even if they did operate on the sphincter muscle, they couldn't solve the problem completely. And I will still have to conduct a lifestyle change, to embark on a lifestyle change. Option number 2 was to embark on a lifestyle change where I adopted a healthier lifestyle and, get this, lost weight. So I was okay with the lifestyle change, because I thought, okay, eat more fruits and vegetables. But when it came to the weight loss part, coming from someone who was a doctor, and HAES was really, really insistent that doctors were really biased against overweight people, and there was this doctor telling me that I needed to lose weight. Well, as you can imagine, I was not happy about it. And I told him that I did not need to lose weight. I was 67 kilograms at the time, and my upper limit based on my BMI is 62. So I was 5 kilograms overweight, and it showed. But I told the doctor that was muscle, and I told him that he was wrong, that my weight had nothing to do with my issue. But the doctor was not here to argue with my HAES theories. He was here to tell me what the medical facts were, and his voice reverberated through the room when he said,
You are overweight, and your weight is a huge trigger for your gastroesophageal reflux disease. If you want to get better, you have to lose the weight.
At that point, I had not slept for 2 days. I was feeling horrible. Of course, I did not like that I had just been called overweight at the doctor's office, which is something else that in HAES you're told that doctors are very biased. And I had just experienced bias, well, according to me at that time. And I felt very angry and very hurt. But I was also happy to get a diagnosis, and I decided that I would prove him wrong, because I would change my lifestyle and not lose weight, and then I will end up feeling better. So I went home and I started on this action plan. The idea was to eliminate any trigger foods, and that required me to undergo an elimination diet and find out what the trigger foods were. I also have to mention that the doctor did tell me that I needed to eat smaller meals at every meal time instead of having large meals 3 times a day. So I decided to follow that. I was eating smaller meals and I was still figuring out my trigger foods. And I did these, and I was very meticulous in tracking, and I did not even realize as the time passed by. But 2 months later, my friend and I decided to check our weights at this random place. I'll insert the video here. And they used a machine, those machines that tell you your body fat percentage and whether you're healthy or not. At that point, I was just doing it because it was this random thing that we could do, and it was free. So on stepping on the machine, imagine my surprise on realizing that I was 63 kilograms. I had lost 4 kilograms in just 2 months. And at that point, I was a bit shocked because I was like, oh, I thought weight loss was not possible. Like, HAES tells people that weight loss is not possible. Also, I feel much better at 63 kilograms than I did at 67 kilograms. So is there something to this? I was very confused at that point because it's not what I expected. So on realizing that I was feeling better at 63 kilograms and that I could actually lose weight without restricting, and that HAES was actually kind of wrong. At that point, I was not fully on the HAES is wrong bandwagon. I was like, maybe this way of thinking is wrong. So I'm just going to go back to my diet coaching certification and blend that with the intuitive eating that I had already read about because I really like the principles. So I was going to blend that and come up with a custom plan that will help me lose weight while still enjoying food and movement until I got to my goal weight. And my goal weight at that time was 52 kilograms. I'm 5'3". Based on my height, that will be the perfect middle ground between 47 and 62 kilograms because if I'm 52 kilograms, I'm very far from the upper limit, and I also have a very good buffer between me and the lower limit of my BMI. Oh yes, something I forgot to mention, HAES does not believe in the BMI. By the time I was diagnosed with GERD, I had a BMI of 24.8. And because BMI did not really exist in the HAES world, I did not really register that as a bad thing. Because even if the doctor said, yeah, you're overweight, I was like, over what weight? This time, I decided I was actually going to aim for a very low BMI. Okay, not underweight. It was 19 to 20 in the BMI scale. Because I know 18.5 is the point at which you're veering on the underweight territory. So I worked on my custom plan. And I followed this for 6 months. And by the end of the 6 months, I was down to 56 kilograms. And that meant that I had lost an additional 7. And at 56 kilograms, I was actually able to eat everything, including my trigger foods. Things that I couldn't have had before when I was at 67 kilograms without having nausea or having stomach issues. I was now able to eat them. So I realized that the doctor was right. And to treat my gastroesophageal reflux, I actually had to lose weight because my high weight was affecting my health, which meant that HAES was wrong and that health actually had a very direct relationship with weight. Because if you were overweight like I was, then you were at a higher risk of GERD, which was something that I also learned as I continued doing research on my condition. And I also learned that I was not the only one who had gone down the HAES route and ended up with health issues. There were many people sharing their journeys with HAES, and they were talking about why exactly they had left HAES. Some of them even went online and created really good channels. Like I remember I was watching Megan Ann's videos, and there was also this close relationship between HAES and fat acceptance. We also found people who had left fat acceptance and were now talking about why they had done that and how it had affected their health. And that, combined with the proof that I had already seen in my own journey, was enough to convince me that HAES was actually not a good movement. And I was also starting to feel guilty about the times that I had supported it because I, in my quest to help other people find food freedom, had talked about it with other people. And now I was going back on my word and I was going back to the same people and telling them I've actually changed my mind. I no longer actually believe in HAES. That was 3 years ago. So where do I stand now? I'll start with intuitive eating. I believe that for many people, intuitive eating is a really great concept. However, I'll also acknowledge that it has some issues because there are people who can intuitively eat their way through 10 packs of Oreos and 10 cans of soda, and they'll still want to eat more because intuitive eating assumes that you have a good relationship with food, and that's not the case for everyone. Some people do not have a good relationship with food. For example, people who have I don't think I'm allowed to say these things. So people who have this and also people who have these don't really have a good relationship with food. So if you tell them to eat intuitively, they might end up eating way more food than they actually require. So intuitive eating does work for some people. It works for me. It works for many of my clients, but I know it doesn't work for everyone. There are very many good principles when it comes to intuitive eating, such as listening to your hunger and fullness cues, finding joy in food, finding joy in movement, making sure that food does not restrict you from enjoying a good social life, making sure that you address the food police in your mind. So there's a lot that goes on when it comes to intuitive eating that is actually good for your overall health. As for health at every size, I do agree with many of their points. I agree that weight stigma exists. I agree that weight is not always an indicator of health, because that part where people have healthy BMIs, but they don't have healthy habits. And someone looking at them might think that these people are healthy just because of how they look. But when you actually peel back the layers, you realize that this person has very horrible health habits. And the only reason they look healthy is because they fall within the normal BMI. At the same time, I cannot agree that someone who is obese or underweight can be healthy. They might practice healthy things. Maybe they do look for nourishing food and they do move their body joyfully, but at the same time there's a reason the BMI exists, because we do know that the more that you fall in the underweight category or the more that you fall in the obese category, I'm going to avoid the whole overweight category, because you can be healthy and overweight, but then it depends on how overweight you are. But you can be healthy within that normal BMI to a bit overweight. But then when you're talking about obese and underweight, it's very clear that this person has some habits that are not healthy for them, whether that's because they are under eating or they are over exercising or they are eating more food than they need. And the interesting thing is that this disorder is actually the most common, but it's not talked about a lot because, well, people don't really think of it as a disorder, and that's why HAES is so popular, and that's why fat acceptance is so popular. So when I say that I do agree with HAES, I agree in terms of weight is not always a measure of health. I also agree that weight stigma exists, especially in medical spaces. I agree that movement needs to be joyful. I agree that food needs to be nourishing. I agree that health is not just about how you look, it's also about everything that you do, the way you think, how you move, the people around you. Health is all encompassing. I can agree with all those facts. But when it comes to the fact where they say that health does not have any relationship with your weight, I completely disagree with that. Because enough studies have shown that many people, including me, need to be at a healthy weight in order to manage their health conditions. Because will you really tell someone who's diabetic that it doesn't really matter how big they are? Will you tell someone who has high blood pressure that what they are eating really has no correlation with their condition? That's not true. There's enough science that has shown that that's not true, and it's very wrong to spread a message that encourages people to just put their health in the back burner, knowing that the same decisions that they are making will come back to bite them. I was lucky that I caught my GERD very early, and I was able to reverse it slowly with the help of a really good doctor. And I was also able to bank on my diet coaching certification to get my health back on track. But what about people who don't really experience health conditions that fast, or people who don't really have a fallback plan on what to do if their health just goes off track? Then these people are put in situations that can actually risk their lives. And I think it's wrong to spread a message that can put people in those positions. So where do I stand? The lesson here is not that dieting is the answer. Instead, it's that individual health is very complex and it requires a very nuanced, personalized approach, because what works for one person will not necessarily work for another person. And that's usually been the problem with previous health and fitness programs, where they use this cookie cutter approach and they just put everyone in the same box and they say that you eat 1200 calories and you'll lose the weight, or you should all avoid carbs and just go on this really low carb diet, or you should all do keto. The truth is that everyone has something that works for them, and it's important for people to understand what works for them instead of following just this highly generalized information that's out there that's supposed to work for everyone, because that's not the case. Health is very complex and it requires something that's tailored for every person. And most importantly, sometimes health comes down to being at a comfortable, healthy weight. And that's not something that people do out of vanity. Sometimes it's out of necessity. Not that there's anything wrong with wanting to be healthier for vanity. It's completely okay. I lost the final 4 kilograms between 56 and 52 just because I wanted to look leaner. Not because it will make me healthier. It's because I really wanted my muscles to pop. And now they do. And I'm happy about that. It was just vanity, and that's okay. But now I'm talking about the fact that it's a necessity for some people. Sometimes maintaining that healthy weight is a medical necessity, and it's important for people to recognize that. And that's why I cannot stand by HAES, because if we talk about HAES and then we remove that relationship between weight and health, then we're saying that my health had actually nothing to do with the fact that I was 67 kilograms at the time of my diagnosis, which we know is a lie. It was proven by science, and it was proven by my own practical approach to losing those kilograms and finally getting to a weight where I can actually just drink lemon water without puking. And that's why in my program, which I call Better in 90, I focus on finding an approach that will work for everyone. And by everyone, I mean for every person who joins my program, I work with them and find exactly what works for them. Because I know that a generalized approach will not work for all my clients. I can't just tell them all, okay, here's something that you can all use. No, I need to understand what each person needs, and that comes down to their own goals, their own medical conditions, and their actual stats, because all of these impact the kind of program that will work for them. And again, I really do focus on intuitive approaches. Unless a client has an eating, then I do not really just want to just give them the whole calories in versus calories out approach. No, I want them to find something that's really comfortable, that's really enjoyable, and that's going to be easy for them to continue doing forever. Because that's what I found, that's what's worked for me. I haven't had any rebound in years. I still eat what I want. But of course, I focus more on whole nutritious foods. Like for my birthday, I went out and I ate Dubai chocolate cheesecake. That was amazing. And the next day, I did not feel like eating the cheesecake again, because that's the whole concept of intuitive eating. Because you don't get cravings. Sometimes you'll feel like eating these, you'll satisfy your taste hunger. And then the next day, you don't actually want it again because you're like, oh, I already had it, I enjoyed it. Today, I want something different. And that's the difference between that and the typical diets that people do, where you come out of it and you're ravenous. You want to eat everything. So that's why I combine the typical diet coaching with intuitive eating, just to find something that's really enjoyable and sustainable. If you've ever supported health at every size, or you have thoughts about intuitive eating, I'd like to know what you think about it, especially if you are a proponent of health at every size and then something happened to you, whether that's health-wise, whether that's something else that happened to you that made you think, okay, maybe there's something about this movement that just doesn't sit right with me anymore. I'd like to understand what that was, and I'd like to hear from you, so please leave a comment down below. I'll be making more videos. Usually I just focus on breaking down health myths and weight loss myths, because those are so many. And if you'd like to learn more about those, I have my playlist down below. And yes, the next time you probably come, I'll probably have found something that works for this, because this is so plain. But I liked the lighting in this area, you know, minimal shadows. Like the lighting is perfect. So I just thought, okay, it doesn't really matter if this is here. Maybe next time it will be a plant, or it will be something to do with my business, or just something else that's fun to look at as I talk. And that's it. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for joining me. If you're still here, please hit the like and subscribe, because you definitely liked what I said, right? Yes, because you're still here. See you next time. Bye.